first came out, but it was like a group thing. It's good.
Good evening. I'm going to call the Village of Oregon Board meeting to order. It's Monday, October 16th, 2023 at 5 p.m. I am sitting in for Phil Van Kampen this evening because he is not feeling well. So, Candy, would you take the roll call, please?
Beshin,
Here.
Belo,
Here.
Kirchdorfer,
Here.
Menke,
Here.
McDaniel,
Here.
and Peterson.
Here. And just a quick reminder to everyone to speak clearly into your microphones so that it picks up for the people at home. Thanks. Next is number 3 on the agenda, approval of Village Board meeting minutes from September 27th, 2023 and October 2nd, 2023. Is anybody? Motion to approve? I can do both of those, right?
Yep.
Okay. So I see Derek and Carlene for first and second. Any comments or changes? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, motion's pass. Okay, number 4, public appearances, comments, and communications. Item 4A is public comment. This is the part of the agenda that allows members of the public to provide information to the village board, including items both on and off the agenda. The board is able to receive the information and ask clarifying questions, but not to have a back and forth discussion. And 15 minutes is for this item, 3 minutes maximum per speaker. Is there anybody from the public who would like to speak? Okay, seeing none, let's move on. Item 4B is a proclamation recognizing Billy Hansen for his outstanding service and dedication to the Village of Oregon. And I thought we could each read a paragraph. I have a hard copy here that we can.
Hey, Amanda,
Pass down.
could Jeff say something really quick?
Oh,
before
yes,
you-
please,
absolutely.
please.
I just
yes.
wanted to go through this memo that I put in the packet. Unfortunately, Billy called me this afternoon and said he was sick, and actually left me a message. What I wanted to tell him was you don't have to call in sick anymore, and sound like you're sick, now that he's retired. But so, anyways, I did let him know that he could watch on OCA Media and YouTube, and hopefully he and his wife Marsha are doing that this evening. I've had the honor of working with Billy for just over 8 years, and in my time knowing him, he's always treated others with respect, thoughts of others before self, and has done his work with a positive attitude and a positive demeanor. I've had the joy of seeing Billy perform well with our public works crews, also as a parks crew person. I know we have brought many new things into his world in the past few years with Highlands of Netherwood Park and JC Park, but he has taken this all in stride, learning new skills and continuing to excel at his old skills as we have learned to take care of these new facilities and fields. I've always found Billy to be willing to try anything and also provide suggestions if he felt there was a better or more efficient way of doing something. He serves the village with joy and rarely complains about much. Billy is also very personable and approachable, which is important in a parks crew person. I have seen him interact with residents in all situations, both good and bad, and he always treats others with respect and kindness. They say you can't teach old dogs new tricks, and in some ways, Billy may follow this philosophy. I base this thought solely on the fact that he remains as one of the only people in Dane County without a cell phone. Billy surely remembers simpler times in our village and may at times look back on those days as the good old days. I like to think of it in a different way. Billy has sacrificially given his time, talents, and resources to public works for 19 years, and in doing so has helped make the village a better place to live and raise a family. We'll greatly miss him and his smiling face around public works. I personally would like to thank Billy for everything that he has given to the village and to wish him the very best and a much deserved retirement. And if you're watching at home, Billy, well done.
Thank you, Jeff. That was great. And I think we'll just read this out loud and pass it down. We'll each take a paragraph. So I'll get the intro and we'll keep going. So proclamation recognizing Billy Hansen for his outstanding service and dedication to the Village of Oregon. The Oregon Board and staff of the Village of Oregon, Wisconsin wish to honor Public Works employee Billy Hansen for his dedication to the village and to recognize the many positive contributions he has made to the community. Whereas Billy began his career with the Village of Oregon on October 11th, 2004, and will retire from Public Works on October 11th, 2023, serving exactly 19 years of exemplary service. And
Whereas Billy was originally hired as a Public Works crew person and later promoted to Parks crew person in August 2018, and
Whereas Billy is a dependable, hardworking, and dedicated individual who is always willing to complete tasks and duties for Public Works in a positive and effective manner, and
Whereas Billy has undertaken the responsibility of the care and maintenance of our beautiful park system, including the new Highlands of Netherwood Park and the recently reconstructed JC Community Park, and
Whereas Billy's commitment has helped immensely in the care, plowing, and salting of our public sidewalks in the parks, downtown areas, and other public spaces throughout the village, and
Whereas Billy's calm demeanor and consistent commitment make him a joy to work with, manage, and know as a person, he will be missed by many.
keep going, just read that.
Now therefore be it resolved that the Village of Oregon formally recognizes and honors Billy Hansen and his many accomplishments he has achieved with the village and wishes him the very best in his well-deserved retirement, presented on October 16th, 2023 at the Village Board meeting. We did celebrate Billy this last Wednesday, his last day, with a little pizza party down at Public Works, and it had staff from different departments and areas, because we do so much crossover with different departments. And it was really fun to see, and as well as hear a few news stories, maybe one or two that might have changed a line or two in my calm demeanor proclamation. But no, it was just a lot of fun to celebrate with him. I know, honestly, I saw him. It's a neat place you work when someone is genuinely sad to retire and leave. So this is most everyone. We've had a few on vacation and stuff, but one of the things that they remind me of, there's this picture of Billy standing in this in our salt shed during the 2008 year where we had over 110 inches of snow, and the Observer had done an article on him and said basically it was the positive comments and a lot of Mountain Dew that kept him going. So as a result, I think most of the guys got him a case of Mountain Dew for his retirement. So yeah, thank you.
Thanks for your service. Okay, item 4C is a proclamation recognizing October 20, 2023 as Community Media Day in the state of Wisconsin and the importance and value of Oregon community access media in the Village of Oregon. Tom, did you ever want to say anything to this, or?
I had nothing planned.
That's okay, I didn't either, but you know, so Tom is president of the OCA Media Board, and I serve as the Village Board representative on the OCA Media Board, so.
We also have the executive director, Paul Zwickers, in the back, so, hey, Paul. I guess the OCA Media has played an important role in Oregon for a long time. They've been around since 1985. They have been providing a lot of service to the Village of Oregon the last few years. The quality of the programming has grown and expanded. They now take it upon themselves to not only report news, but also tell about the people and the character of our community. They do a great job, and I guess we appreciate all they do. They work in a difficult financial climate that it used to be supported by franchise fees, and those have been dwindling and going away. So they do a lot with an awful lot of little, and we really appreciate everything that they do.
Yeah, I couldn't have said it better myself. All right, now we're going to do the same thing. We're going to read the proclamation. So this is recognizing October 20th as Community Media Day in the state of Wisconsin and the importance and value of Oregon community access media in the Village of Oregon. So whereas on October 6th, 2023, Governor Tony Evers proclaimed October 20th, 2023 as Community Media Day throughout the state of Wisconsin and commended the observance to all of the state's residents. And
Whereas the Village of Oregon shares in the governor's celebration of the hard work and importance of community media centers, supporting local media and citizen involvement in the community happenings, and
Whereas Oregon Community Access, OCA, Media is a community media center that operates in and serves the Oregon community by providing video programming of local government meetings, community events, youth sports, human interest stories, and an assortment of cultural, recreational, and educational activities through many platforms, including the local public access channel, video streaming platforms, and social media platforms, and
Whereas, through its programming, OCA Media encourages government transparency, fosters civic engagement, elevates local voices, promotes area businesses, and provides educational opportunities to students and
Whereas by fostering a sense of community identity, connection, and understanding, the Village of Oregon recognizes the importance and value of OCA Media provides to the vitality and fabric of the Oregon community.
Now therefore, Phil Van Campen, Village President of the Village of Oregon, Wisconsin, hereby proclaim that the Village Board of Oregon observes October 20th, 2023 as Community Media Day in the state of Wisconsin and recognizes the importance and value of OCA Media to the Oregon community.
excellent, yay. Thank you. And thanks to Dan sitting back there recording tonight too, so. All right, next on the agenda is 4D, Community Development Block Grant Disaster Recovery Funds, Habitat for Humanity K-Court Housing Project Public Hearing. So I am going to open officially the public hearing on this and invite Mark, I hope I don't say Verbicker, okay, to come on up and talk to us, and Steve Hanrahan from Habitat for Humanity. I'll read the number here. It's first an update on the status of the Community Development Block Grant Project, the CDBG project, including an overview of project activities completed to date and activities remaining to be completed. Go ahead.
All right, good afternoon. My name is Mark Stewart. I'm with Veerbecker Associates. I work out of the Reedsburg office, and I am the one that's handling the grant administration for the project. And we've partnered with Habitat for Humanity to create 8 housing units on Kai Court. And so far to date, really been working on the infrastructure improvements to it, but I have Steve here to go through kind of the project and give us a little brief update of where we stand with the project.
Thanks, Mark. Steve Hanrahan with Habitat. Thanks for having me tonight. Kai Court has been long in the development, named after a resident of Oregon who's a longtime Habitat volunteer. He's on our land acquisition committee, actually helped us make the decision with Elisa's help a number of years ago to purchase the property that's now our Kai Court Oregon development. As Mark said, we finished the infrastructure with the exception of the stormwater area in the back, and that's planned. This way it'll be done after the construction of the structures to make sure it's done properly. We built or poured 2 foundations for 4 families, and we'll be working on those through the winter, closing on them in the spring, probably in the April, May, June timeframe. As is our model, we do not start construction on a home till we have families assigned. Please don't ask me their names tonight because I don't have them memorized, but we do have 4 families already assigned to Oregon. They'll be moving in as soon as we get their homes done and they close on their mortgage with us at Habitat. Once that's complete, our fiscal year ends on June 30th. We will then dig the other foundations and start the final 4 homes, and we'll complete those next year. So I'm happy to answer any other questions, but that's a very brief summary of where we're at.
Any questions? Go ahead, Tom.
Just on the diagram, which foundations have been poured?
The 2, yep, right there, those 2.
Front two? Okay, thank you.
Anybody else? No. Oh, Carleen, sorry.
I'm just wondering in general how construction so far has gone and what you're thinking it's going to be, knowing that there've been lots of ups and downs in pricing and other stuff. Do you foresee any more challenges?
It's always a challenge, but thanks for asking. I think the big increases from 2 years ago and a few last year are still, concerning, but they're not going to be nearly as drastic as they were. They came as quite a shock to everybody in the construction business. I think we weathered that storm. What's still an issue, however, is the lack of labor in the construction world. And so we deal with that as well with our subcontractors. When they come in, we have had some delays as, with almost any of them. But we do build that into our process. When I'm telling you spring, I'm very confident that even with delays, we will accomplish that. As I tell anyone that wants to listen, we are not the fastest builders in the world. In fact, we're probably the slowest. But we do get it done with the community's help and the homeowners' help. And we're on target right now to have those done in the spring.
Great, thank you.
Anybody else? Okay. Number 2, and you can stay there, I think, for this, is the housing needs in the community discussion.
So as far as housing needs, it's, the village did a housing study, last year and a housing affordability report. And as with most communities around Wisconsin, that we're seeing a need for housing, and that's no different here, whether it's Dane County as a whole or the village. There are, many vacant or undeveloped parcels in the community. And then with the growing population, not only of the village, but of Dane County, that is causing, that additional need for housing. And like I said, we've done several housing studies around the state, and it's no different. There is really a push for the need for all types of housing. And what's called affordable housing is kind of a buzzword, but that's really is categorized as 30% of your income, and that's for anybody. So that's what is meant by affordable. You don't want to cap out at 100% of your income to afford something, but it's across the board, and we're seeing that there is that need for transitional housing from first-time home buyers to an upper level, and then the need for that first-time home buyer to come in, and we're also seeing that that transition out for retired, going from a certain level house to another level house or single level housing. Is also a need that's kind of a universal need out there. So, but the housing report that was done in 2022 is a relevant document, and it paints a pretty good picture of the needs here in the community. Yeah.
If I could add, I've been a member of the Dane County Regional Housing Strategy Task Force for the last year, and there will be a plan that will be shared with everyone in the county coming out, they say, before the end of the year. So you can add that to the information that was compiled in 2022, and it'll give you a pretty good picture of what the whole county is experiencing right now, and some goals as to what we need to do to alleviate most of the issue, which will be impossible.
Anybody on the board have questions about that? Okay, I have one question. I'm wondering what kind of services are available for people who don't fit the traditional income of like between 30 to 80% of the county median income, which is what a lot of people, consider to be affordable housing. Is there anything for people that fall below that threshold that you know of?
From the Habitat standpoint, we do offer financial training to help people get their budgets in order and then hopefully qualify in the future. We just opened our informational meeting signups for this quarter Monday, and it was filled up by noon. The demand is unbelievable out there for people that need this, but we can't take all of them. There'll be 150 people that signed up for the meetings. Out of that, we'll probably get a third of those that'll apply for a Habitat home, and we restrict the incomes to 30 to 60%. The state and HUD goes to 80, but Habitat's model limits it to 60. Out of that, a third of those will not qualify for our program. And then it depends on how many we're gonna build in the next 2 years as to how many we can accept. So we have had situations where people have not qualified because of financial reasons, taken our course, and then reapplied in a future time period, and they've been successful. So there is some help. There's also a number of housing organizations out there that provide counseling in that regard. It's mainly to help people find housing in the rental world and what have you. Does that help, or is that?
It does. I'm glad to know that there are ways to help people become eligible for these programs. I guess I was thinking more about seniors who aren't the kind who are going to maybe go out and get a job necessarily to get in that range. Their retirement income
Sure.
is low, and so how they tend to, I would think, slip through the cracks sometimes. And maybe you aren't the people to answer this. I just was kind of throwing it out there as, do you know what kind of services are available for people who can't increase their income?
I am not an expert by any stretch, but we do happen to have a project we're partnering on in Sun Prairie for a senior affordable housing project. So we'd be looking all over the county to partner with others to do that as well. On the service side, I'm sorry, I'm not familiar enough with what's available.
That's
So,
okay.
so from this funding source, this is the Community Development Block Grant that was passed down from HUD down to the State Department of Administration, and this is disaster recovery funds, so they're specific for housing and housing displacement. And the goal of this project is that 51% or more of the housing units created need to be for low to moderate income. And that doesn't determine if you're senior or not senior, it's just based on income. And so in this case, any of the communities that receive this type of funding, the units that are created, at least 51% have to be for low to moderate income. But as anything specifically related to seniors, and it just really falls under the words of affordable housing, whether that's the Wisconsin Housing and Economic Development Administration, or if it's the USDA, excuse me, or other funding sources such as TIF. Those are other avenues to assist with funding towards housing projects, really, in general.
Anybody else? All right, and thank you very much for coming and explaining all this. And then we'd move to number 3 on the agenda as part of the hearing, citizen input regarding the community development block grant activities. Does anyone from the public want to speak on this? Not seeing anybody, so I will officially close the hearing on the block grants. And do we need to vote on anything or do anything here? No? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank
very
you for
much.
coming.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
I have one signed already, but I can, if you want it tonight.
All right, then we will move to 4E on the agenda, which is a presentation from the Oregon Youth Center on activities and their 2024 budget requests. So this is Kelly, Katie, and Tammy? Okay.
Are we allowed to bring 3 chairs up here?
Oh, sure. Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Come on up. You have to squat on the floor.
We weren't sure if we had to switch out.
Just have to share the mics.
Yeah, share the mics and introduce yourself as you talk.
Well, hello, I'm Kelly. Oh, yeah, there's our OYC.
And pull it real close so
Okay.
it really picks it up. There you
Okay.
go.
Hi, I'm Kelly. I'm the OYC president. A lot of you also know I work for the village, but this is my volunteer gig. And so we are the board of directors of the Oregon Youth Center, Inc. We are a small nonprofit 501c3 organization that oversees the OYC after school program and maintains the building. And we hire the paid staff who runs the day-to-day the program and our daily operations. And the board of directors for the youth center is all volunteers, and we're from the community. We just, we believe that young people, community should provide safe spaces for young people to hang out, get snacks, hopefully learn a couple of life skills. And our after-school program runs its after school for grades 5th through 9th. And we also run a summer program in the afternoons. And our organization has been running the center since 2014. You could go to the next slide.
The next one?
Oh, it's okay. And this is the building we started in, the old, I heard it was an ambulance shed, but the kids, we loved it. As you can see in the lower left-hand corner, that's in the old center, and Tammy's son is in there. And so they're just having snacks, so we do a lot of feeding of kids and activities. But we took over the youth center in 2014 because the YMCA used to oversee the program, but they decided they were no longer wanted to have that type of programming. So our director at the time, Diane, called us all together, stakeholders in the community. We were I was part of an advisory board just to plan things, and called us, said, we gotta save this. And I knew that the kids loved it. It was a great asset. So the advisory board basically became the first board of directors, and Aaron Chisman, who's the owner of Academy of Sound, was a big part of us quickly becoming a 501c3, so that we could, take over the center, and the Village of Oregon and other municipalities that support us, along with Dane County, and that you were so gracious and took a chance on us and continued to fund the youth center. And in about 2017, the OCRN, which is the Oregon Community Resource Network, approached us about building a new building, and replacing the ambulance shed. And and the OCRN is the group that built the food pantry, fundraised and built it. And we loved the ambulance shed. We had a lot of good years and fun in there. But it was time, the toilets weren't gonna hold up, and the corner just needed to look a little nicer. So and I should say Hillcrest Church was great. That other picture in the right-hand corner is us at Hillcrest Church. They housed our program and let us hang out there after school while the youth center was being built. And then in summer of 2019, and yep, we are in our current building, as you can see there. And it's been, for all of us, it's been a wild few years. We got through a pandemic, staff changes, but we continue to build community relationships with the school district, other organizations. We feed lots of kids, have lots of fun, and we're really working on not swearing, which is a big middle school. If you have a middle schooler, you realize there's a lot of that, and we're working on that. So that's kind of our history, a short history of where we are. And now Katie will kind of talk about today.
All right, so my name is Katie Schiefelbein, and I came on the board in 2020, right after COVID, and kind of helped with that reopening of the center and getting us back on track with the kids. Due to some recent unfortunate staff turnover over the last 6 months, I've stepped into the role of interim director in order to kind of regroup the center and put our best foot forward for hiring a director. So I have 3 children that are in the center. I have a freshman in high school, an 8th grader, and then a 5th grader who is excited to be at the youth center now as well. And so we were closed for about 4 weeks from middle August to middle September. Then I said I'd step into the role, so we opened 3 weeks ago, and steadily we have like 20 to 30 kids coming every day, depends on the day. So the mission of the center is guiding, empowering, engaging, and inspiring the youth of, yeah, these are pictures from these last couple weeks, so. Guiding, empowering, engaging, and inspiring youth in the Oregon School District. And as a board, the 3 of us are committed to this mission, and we really do lean on the community of Oregon to help us achieve it. And some of the ways that we do this are through our volunteer program. So we're getting a couple different funnels, like kids that age out of the program but don't want to leave the center. We put them to work and kind of mentor them and help them give back, and but they're still peers of the kids that come, so it's kind of a cool synergy that happens. Then we have high schoolers that come through that are trying to fulfill their volunteer hours, and so they come in and do programming, and they do a lot of not so much mentoring, but like homework help, tutoring, stuff like that. And then we have adults that want to volunteer, and so they go through like an application process, background checks, and they'll volunteer at the center, or we're always looking for more board members to join. We also lean on the community for programming. So we, for instance, we have the My Tree Wellness Center coming in to do mindfulness classes with the kids like once a month. The Infinity Martial Arts is going to do practical self-defense. We're trying to like push that specific word. Kelly actually comes in and does programming through the library. She comes once a week. It's great. They love it when she comes because she has very fun, things and educational things for the kids. And then like we've done programs with Oregon Cares and the Girl Scouts and Moms Who Code. So we really want to get community members in and involved with the kids. And the kids like that because when a new person is there, they kind of respect them more. Like it's not the same me or whatever trying to do it. And then we also rely on the community for funding, local businesses, municipalities, and then community members will donate money, food, time, whatever. It's very helpful. And then community service projects. We're trying to do more of those. So actually, if any of you have suggestions for that, I would love to hear it. I'm always looking for that. So let's look at some of the demographics. Okay, so here's a slide. This kind of shows the growth over the last 3 years since we opened from COVID. In the school year 2021, 2022, we had 151 enrolled. And then just kind of to show the growth since we don't have a full school year, we had like 35 kids enrolled by October. Then 2022, 2023, total 202 enrolled over the school year, 57 by October. So we've been open 3 weeks and we already have 81 enrolled. So it's a lot of growth. And next slide. Oh yeah, that shows. We opened on the 26th. Okay, so here's some demographics. This is where the kids are coming from. 5% Fitchburg, 10% kind of outlying areas, Rutland, Dunn, Albany, and Evansville, 13% Brooklyn, 15% Town of Oregon, and then 57% Village of Oregon. These kids are biking over, walking over. And we also have a bus route too, from OMS, RCI, and FES. Next slide. This is kind of the grade level of kids that are there. A lot of 5th and 6th graders, 7th grade, 15%, 8th grade, 10%. And then 9th grade, like I said, they're kind of phasing out and I'm putting them to work so they don't want to come as much. Some do, so it's good. Reported racial identity, 7% Hispanic, 7% other. Black is 15%, and then white is 71%, so it's fairly diverse. Next slide. Reported gender identity, we have some non-binary students, 24% female and 75% male. It is crazy going on over there. So that is our makeup right now. So Tammy will speak to our funding.
Good evening, Village Board members. My name is Tammy, and I'm the treasurer for the Oregon Youth Center, and I've served on the board since 2017. My involvement with OYC began when my oldest had heard about the youth center and begged me to check it out. One afternoon, him and I stopped by the OYC when it was located in the old building, and he immediately felt welcome and couldn't wait to start going every day after school. Fast forward to today, and all 3 of my children have benefited from OYC. My 2 oldest have aged out, and my youngest is a current attendee. OYC is a free drop-in program, and it provides a safe space for youth to hang out with friends and participate in different scheduled activities. My children have participated in the many activities and the events OYC has provided. This is one of the reasons why I am happy to volunteer my time to serve on the board to help OYC keep thriving. My duties as treasurer include managing the payroll. I run the payroll for the employees. I manage the deposits, pay the bills, assist the director with budget planning, filling out all the required tax documents and payments, report monthly financial activities to the board, manage the financial records, and coordinate with the director on purchases for programming needs, and filing the annual charitable organization paperwork with the Department of Financial Institutions. And now, next slide, I'll talk about our different funding sources that we have. The majority of the funding comes from the municipalities, and that being the village, the town of Dunn, the village of Brooklyn, town of Rutland, and the town of Oregon. Another big chunk of our funding comes from Dane County, and then the United Way, and then the other sources of funding we get are from donations or grants or fundraising that we do. Next slide. Oh, I talked about, here's the different amounts of funding we get from each of the municipalities.
Next one.
Next slide.
Okay.
And then this chart just shows where our expenses go to, and the majority of our expenses go to paying staff, goes to the salaries. We typically have a director and an assistant director that run the center, and then we have utilities and insurance, and then building maintenance and operating budget, or operating. So that's an overall where our funding goes to. And that's it.
Okay. Thank you for that wonderful overview. I learned some things. Does the board have any questions for these folks? No, I'm not seeing any. Can I just ask how many board members have had a kid use the Oregon Youth Center? Okay, 3 of us, so. I definitely see the value in the youth center. I love it. My son went there, and I like funding it. I think it's, we don't have, honestly, we don't have a lot of things for kids in that age range to do in town. So this is an important service that we provide, and it's great that you guys have programming and things that keeps them interested in coming back. Anybody else? Derek, you want?
Yeah,
then
just
Carly.
to kind of echo some of Amanda's comments, I mean, really, this is one of those integral services that are provided by you folks. I mean, it ranks right up there with food pantry and senior center, things like that in my book. So I'm only too happy to see the funding request and be a part of getting that through.
Carleen?
I was a middle school teacher for almost 30 years, and I understand completely that middle school is really the time that we need to be engaging kids in productive activities, particularly during unstructured times. So if they're not playing some kind of organized sport or music or whatever, having something like the youth center is a really important asset and an important thing to invest in. So I echo the investment. I do have a question of, so you're interim director right now. And from your comments and from just my peripheral knowledge, my kids did not go to the youth center. We lived rural and blah, blah, blah. You don't need to know. But what plan do you have for addressing what from your comments seems to me like a frustrating turnover problem?
Okay, yeah, we have a plan. We were trying to, we had directors in the role for a long time. But we weren't able to offer, we were trying to get a full-time person in, but we weren't able to offer benefits. And so that was a deterrent from getting a quality, person in the role. And while we're still not able to do that, what we're thinking is increasing the rate per hour. And in order to fit that into our budget, pulling back on the hours that a person would be required to work in the position, and even like closing the center on Mondays and then just having it open Tuesday through Friday until we get more grants and funding in the door, which is part of our ask for this year from you guys. And I think the reason we had turnover is because we tried to split the director position into 2 roles, which was like an administrator and then a program coordinator. But in order to get those 2 in, like we couldn't offer a lot of compensation for that. And so that's why we were seeing more turnover. So we're trying to regroup and address that with, getting the right person. And I will stay on until the right person comes in the door for that role.
Sounds like you've given a lot of thought about how we solve this, so I appreciate your sharing. Thank you.
Well, I'll hop in and thank you, all 3 of you, for giving us some information and volunteering your time. I appreciate your dedication. Obviously, I will agree with all that was said, and that funding it is really useful. I know that money can only go, or that, money is one asset that you have. And so if there's any need that you have for volunteering or reach outs, I won't speak for the whole board, but I'll speak for myself in saying that I'll do whatever I can to sort of help get information out to the community, or at least lend a hand. So don't hesitate to reach out if there's other things that you need throughout the year.
Thank you.
And you guys have an email blast list, right? Like people can sign up for that. How? We want to talk to that, so.
It's on our website. You could sign up for our email list and getting the updates and that. Our Facebook page is also a great place to find out. But at any time we take snacks. Kids love chips and yogurts and Capri Suns. And like Katie said, we're always also, if you know someone who wants to get, is community minded, wants to work with youth, we're always looking for board members.
I had a question too. Are you going to the other municipalities and requesting an increase also? Okay, good. I mean, just to be
Yes.
I guess just
fair
one
across the board.
follow-up on that then. So you showed average budgets of $50,000 as a typical budget. What are you looking for in 2024 as your annual budget?
At least 60
Okay.
in order to sustain this.
And it was, the 50,000 was also related to our 501c3 status. We could kind of get a quick in, and at the time, our director wasn't willing to take more money, but that's also put us a little behind now on trying to catch up on wages. But we're working on, it's not that complicated, it's just a couple now extra steps with the IRS, but part of that 50,000 was that.
Anything else? And, Martin, the 17,000 that they're asking for, that was incorporated into the draft budget, correct?
Yes, it is in there right now. Yep.
Okay, so, excellent. Do we need to vote on anything, or is that just?
Nope.
Okay. Then we're good. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
All right. Next is item number 5 on the agenda, the approval of vouchers in the amount of $2,096,528.01. The recommendation is to approve as presented. Let's get a motion and then we can take questions. So I see Jason and Tom. Any questions or comments? Okay, seeing none, it's a roll call vote.
Mankey,
Yes.
Kirchdorfer,
Yes.
Bashan,
Yes.
Peterson,
Yes.
Belo,
Yes.
and McDaniel.
Yes.
Great. Then number 6 is the consent agenda, and we can approve these all at once. Should I read each one just to like it?
You don't have to.
Okay. These are pretty straightforward items that don't require a lot of discussion. Their information is in the packet. So can I get a motion? Oh, sorry, Lynn and Derek. Any questions for staff on this? Okay, then all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion passes. Number 7 is report of committees, and we didn't have any submissions. So number 8 is unfinished business. Items are for discussion and or possible action. 8A is the cost reimbursement agreement with North Point Development 2 Corporation for proposed development of property located at 249 and 267 North Main Street. The recommendation is to approve as presented. How about a motion? And Jason and Tom. And any discussion on this, or Elise, did you want to say anything? I don't know whose item this is.
I can take it. So I think we've done one of these with some of our new board members, but if not, we do a cost reimbursement agreement with any development application that requires kind of multiple meetings more than just kind of a standard simple one meeting approval. So this will just be an ongoing deposit that we hold from North Point for the work that we'll do for the kind of entitlement process for their development on the 249, 267 North Main Street property. We bill them monthly. We just hold on to that deposit as long as they don't go more than 45 days overdue. That deposit is just kind of held and then returned once all the applications are done. So right now we're working on a sale and purchase agreement that'll come before you in a draft form once we kind of get to more of a final draft level, but hopefully in the next couple of weeks. But yeah, this is like largely it will be my time, attorney time, largely kind of reviewing some of those agreements and then moving forward with all the planning reviews.
Carleen?
I just have one question related to the drawing on page 46 of the packet. Have there been any drawings since the one that they presented in the original because we had some questions about might they change this or that, and I'm just curious as to whether there have been any changes.
Yes. Yeah, and I think, Martin, I don't know if we had an exact date, but we were planning on having Sean come to the board meeting as well, maybe one of the November meetings to do an update on the concept plan. Sean O'Brien from North Point was just at the October Planning Commission meeting for a concept review. They hadn't, been part of the whole RFP process, so kind of just reintroducing North Point, bringing them up to speed on kind of the vision for the property. So again, just a concept plan at this point, but there was some changes made to the arrangement of the townhomes. So it's still 24 townhomes, but the things were moved around to keep the drive aisles further away from the trees and kind of condense some of the development, a little bit more space for stormwater and, space for kind of future park improvements, whatever those may be. So still same number of units, but yeah, there's 6 townhomes that would be kind of facing North Main Street. They'd be accessed from an alley, the garages, but they'd have a front porch kind of presence on North Main Street to fit in better with kind of historic homes with front porches there. And then a block of 4 that are kind of perpendicular to those you can see, and then 14 that are along that western property line, and then room for the pond still. So got some really good feedback from Planning Commission just about grades and other things to consider on the property. So still a lot of engineering work to be done on that. But yeah, we'll probably have Sean back in front of you guys in the next couple of weeks to bring up to speed, probably when we have maybe that first version of the agreement in front of you too, so we can discuss both at the same time.
Great, thank you.
Anything else on this? Okay, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion passes. I don't even know if I have to ask that every time if it.
You're doing just fine. Yeah.
All right. All right. Yeah. Okay, 8B, JC Community Park Phase 2 Design Bidding and Construction Phase Services Proposal with Rettler Corporation in the amount of $206,000. And the recommendation is to approve as presented. Can I get a motion and a second? Carleen and Derek. And any discussion on this? And does anyone want to speak to it? Jeff, is that your?
No, I read, Ross was here at the last meeting and kind of outlined kind of the direction. And this is just their task order that we said we'd bring back so they can get going on design.
Okay. Then all those, there's no discussion. Okay. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion passes.
Thank you.
Okay, 8C is review process and timeline for downtown master planning. This is Elise or Martin? Elise? Okay.
I can start. So per trustee Bealo's request at our last meeting, bringing this back for discussion as an agenda item. So, we have in our CIP $20,000 this time set aside for a downtown master plan. Downtown plans that they wrote, establish a vision for the future, coordinate improvement activities, provide guidance to owners and developers, and provide kind of a marketing tool for downtown. We have done a couple of different downtown plans over the years. So over 20 years ago now, we did a downtown plan that led to quite a few improvements downtown to districts 3 and 5, the Hitching Post Park, signage, redesign of a lot of the kind of streetscape, planters, things like that downtown, as well as all the water tower improvements. And then more recently, we did a civic campus plan, which was mostly just focused, of course, on public buildings. I think at the time it also included the youth center, which hadn't found its new home yet, but Village Hall, library, post office, and senior center were all contemplated, and now that all of those have kind of found their future home spot, a lot of that information, a lot of the community feedback is still valuable, but a lot of the assumptions that was made and kind of focus on those buildings isn't really helpful to us anymore. We are now kind of at a different spot. So given things in the air with the fire station, Old Village Hall, redevelopment of the block where the new senior center will go, and then kind of larger wanting to take some of the feedback from our comp plan process that we want to expand downtown, make it more dense, walkable, livable, have more activity down there, kind of 24/7, which includes more people living downtown, thinking about how events downtown might look in the future. Felt like it was appropriate time to bring this back to the forefront and update our downtown plan and kind of answer some practical questions too about what do we want to do with village controlled spaces and how does that impact decisions for fire station and park improvements and all of that down the line too. So Martin and I kind of put together a rough timeline here, giving ourselves just some flexibility, knowing that this is going to be a bit of a process. We, in writing the scope and making sure we're going to be asking the questions that we feel need to be answered, and not missing anything, and figuring out what type of consultant we want here. If it's more of a planner, maybe more of a landscape architecture firm or urban design with more kind of drawn plans and some ideas about future streetscape or kind of look of downtown. So we're proposing we kind of take the rest of this year to establish the scope, draft the RFP, and then bring that to the board for approval. That might take a meeting or two. Advertise the RFP probably through the holidays into January. Like we've done with a lot of our RFPs, have a panel of likely some board members, maybe planning commission too, and some staff to interview the finalists from the RFP. Then we have to work on a contract, and then kind of all of the comparable plans that I've been able to find, I think giving at least 6 months for the process, including community engagement, whatever kind of boots on the ground work that has to be done by the consultant, and then draft review and refinement of the plan, and then adoption of the plan. 6 months is kind of a minimum. I think 6 to 9 months is probably a pretty good window. So we think we can kind of get this all wrapped up by this time next year, maybe a little bit sooner. But just kind of wanted to get your thoughts on the process, and then if you're in favor of that, we'll start working on kind of a scope and building out that RFP and bring that to you all probably later in November, early December to start reviewing that.
Tom, go ahead.
I guess this is probably the thing I am asked most about in the community, of what's happening downtown and what's going to be downtown. And right now it's all in this sort of nebulous stage. And I guess the faster and the more concrete we can make our steps, the happier or the better answer I can give when people approach us. I understand the needs and so forth. We have a big need, I would think, within the fire station and their space that they need, that we've got to take into consideration in this, and as well as how's the senior center going to come along and all of those other things, and how will we have adjacent services around that. So expediting this in any way that we can I would be very much in favor of.
Lynn?
I agree with Tom that this, I think, is going to be very community focused. And so, because this is my first master planning experience, I'm wondering where community input lies on the timeline. Is that something that we get some control of? Is that something that's kind of built into the process? I would really like to get a sense of where our community is in terms of what their concerted ideas are or thoughts are here before we start making some moves. So where does that lie in this? Like, where would we start to hear from people?
Yeah. Well, I think we started to hear from people in the comprehensive planning process, and that has kind of been this whole year, and a lot of that community engagement was sort of front loaded the early part of the year. So I think we can take some of the questions or issues that were brought up there and probably start to build out, like, these are the questions that we know need to be answered. These are some of the themes that we've heard that are, again, kind of our goals for downtown. So we hope that this plan will help us kind of move towards those goals. Obviously, you know, the board meetings are open to the public, and I think we'd have the RFP, you know, we can kind of put some information out there about this will be discussed at, you know, whatever meeting in November in terms of this is what the village hopes to get out of this plan. If you'd like to come and provide any feedback, you know, here's a good time to do that. And then definitely through the master planning process, it tends to kind of be on the front end, kind of once the consultant gets caught up to speed with the community, depending on who we work with. If it's somebody we've worked with before, that might look a little bit different. But yeah, I definitely see this plan having kind of some more hands-on activities and, you know, possibly like downtown kind of more, rather than just a listening session in Village Hall here at the community room. Like, let's actually go downtown and do small walking tours and maybe get some of you to help us, you know, corral people and listen, and let's walk around and like talk about different places, you know, actually physically standing in them, to better understand that, or doing different pop-up events where maybe we block off a parking lot for a day or part of a street and see what that feels like, and have some type of event and kind of, you know, see how people respond, more than just, I think, the standard, here's your survey, and then we can check that box. I think we need to kind of stay on task, you know, on top of trends in community engagement, but also just realize that this is a plan that, yeah, people are really interested in, and we need to create a lot of different accessible and meaningful opportunities to participate in the plan.
Thank you.
Carlene. So I'm really glad this is happening, first of all. I've lived in places where things have happened in a hodgepodge way for lots and lots and lots of years, and then people look back and say, why do we do that? Because it keeps us from doing this other thing. And so having a plan, I think, is really strategic in making sure that community needs, desires, et cetera, are met. And then one suggestion I have is, like, maybe some of us as board members could have some clipboards downtown on this or that day, and say, you know, just stop people on the street and say, you're down here. Why are you down here? What brings you here? What do you like about it? Just, you know, some more informal kinds of things. I mean, a formal survey, but like just actually talking to people who are down there who might not access some of these other things. I'd be happy to do that.
Okay. Go ahead, Derek.
I mean, I love the community input aspect of this, but I agree with Tom. If we can condense the administrative part at the front end of this to kind of expedite this along, I'd appreciate it. So I don't know if we can move up some of the, you know, maybe push that February into January, that March into February, or just try and be on kind of the front end of the timeline that you have presented here. It seems a long, and I understand that especially the community engagement part needs to be a lengthy process just to capture as many people as you can. But if we, like I say, can crunch down the first administrative part of that, that would be great.
My first timeline was a little bit more ambitious. And Martin edited this. No, I did want to just mention one thing with the. I'll just throw you under the bus, whatever.
I know about overpromising.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, he's done this before. The only other thing I wanted to add about community engagement is with some of those activities I was talking about. I think we really want to make sure that we hit those during kind of the times that we like to be outside during the year, and so trying to make sure kind of late spring, early summer, we can time some of those things so we're not asking people to come out for some street festival at the beginning of March or something. But yeah, we'll definitely work that all in.
Well, Carlene would be willing to stand in the snow.
No, I will not be there.
Okay.
Martin, did you want to say anything else?
Yeah, I'll just kind of add on. So I think in terms of timing, you know, at this point, we haven't written anything as far as scope, and the village board and planning commission will be part of this as well. You know, haven't seen scope yet, so obviously we need time to draft it. There's going to have to be time to get it to meetings and, maybe perhaps multiple meetings. So that's sort of why there's a little bit of time built in there. As far as, publishing and advertising the RFP, if we're sending it out December, of course, you have holidays in there. You want to give enough time for consultants to put together a proposal to get something nice to us. And if there's not enough time, are we missing out on certain consultants who just can't turn it around in time? So that's where that sort of starts to extend some things out. But I think we can work as quickly as we can on it, and certainly the interviews and approval of contracts, those things we can sort of anticipate it ahead of time and try to plan those accordingly. But to I guess Lynn and Tom's point, as far as community engagement, your first crack at sort of what that will look like will be in the scope. So that we'll kind of have a general outline of what is all this going to entail. Now, your consultants who are putting in for the proposal, they'll also put in something of what they have in mind based on the direction that we've given them in the scope. So maybe it's 5 community engagement meetings, 2 tours, a survey, all that sort of stuff. Now that'll have to all be incorporated into a contract because they have deliverables and we're going to pay for those deliverables. So that gets all lined out in that process, and then the actual community engagement happens in that master planning process, spring through fall. And then to Tom's point of and Derek's on expediting, usually the way you can carve off time is by getting rid of community engagement. So the more community engagement that you have in these processes, the longer it's going to take, because you have advertising, you have to get it out there, everybody has to be available on those meetings, that has to be there. So that's usually where things start to get kind of extended out, because you're trying to schedule all those things. So we'll try to balance all of those things, and I think, as Elise said, I think there's some places where we can shave off some time. Maybe by late summer, early fall, we're in a position to be done with this for the most part and on our way.
I think we all agree, though, it's worth doing right if we're going to take the time to do it. So if it means it gets adopted in September instead of August or something, that's we want to make sure it's meaningful. But yeah, thankfully we have a lot of templates to choose from with contracts. It's just a matter of, depending who we work with, if that's going to be, kind of align with what they can accept too. But appreciate the feedback.
One of the things too that we're doing on this one, and that Elise would like to do on this, is usually we have Vanderwall, who's been our consultant on planning for everything, and I suppose we could shave off the RFP process if we just used Vanderwall, but I think Elise really wants to try to go out there and see what else is out there, what other consultants are out there, especially you said landscape architects, other entities that may be interested or provide a different perspective than what we're used to. I think this is a good project to go out there and see if we can find a new relationship for this kind of stuff. And we'll still use Vanderwall and other things and that sort of stuff.
So I'm going to caution us about expediting things. I think that we can expedite things because we feel personally some urgency. People are asking us hard questions and we don't have answers. This is the answer, right? We are making a master plan and we want people's input and we want to do it right and we want to do it judiciously and very intentionally. So expediting it feels to me like, let's hurry up and get it done. And in my experience, hurry up and get it done means that we tend to forget things, overlook things, do things in a way that, had we taken more time and heard maybe a few other voices, because we put something out there and then there was some pushback on it, we might have done differently or better. And so I'm just going to say, whoa, let's not rush this process. We're talking about a master plan for the downtown. Let's take the time to do it right so that we don't have to undo stuff and do it over.
Yeah. Anybody else? So yeah, I have to echo what Carlene said. I don't think we should push too hard. We are responding and we're doing it as fast as we can, but we do want to allow for public input for sure. And I'm going to seize on something that Elise said earlier. You talked about, getting somebody possibly who specializes in urban planning. And I think that's going to be really important for this project because we're not just talking about buildings and what we're going to do with that space. We want to make our downtown, super friendly to pedestrians and bicycles, and we want it to be sustainable, and there's a lot of things and that we want to do, and there's not a lot of space. So when you get firms that specialize in urban planning and tight spaces and things, you get more creative designs, and maybe we can design multi-purpose spaces that people can use. And so I really like this idea, and it's nothing against Van de Walle and Associates. They're fine, but I like the idea of kind of reaching out and seeing what else is out there, because this is an important piece of our village and we got to do it right.
And I concur, and I am very curious for whomever we hire to find out how we can balance the public service needs and the economic development with maintaining the character of our village. We've been looking at stretching our brains to figure out how to bring economic development into Oregon, and I think this is a prime spot, especially if we partner with someone who knows how to do it well, and I believe that's something folks in our community want in our downtown.
Yep. Does that help you with your scope at all, like listening to us, what the kinds of things we're looking for?
Yeah, let us take a crack at it and we'll get this back as soon as we can.
Do you need a motion to approve the project?
It does call for a
Oh, it
motion.
does.
But
Yeah, I
not
mean,
needed.
so we're approving the
Process.
timeline as presented, the idea of it, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so,
So I'll move.
okay, Jason, and I saw Lynn first, so.
I don't need to.
You did that, Jason and Lynn?
Jason and McDaniel.
Yeah, okay. Okay, and any other discussion? All right, all those in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you for that.
No one opposed?
No one unopposed. Or no one opposed, I should say. All right, number 9 is new business. Items are for discussion and or possible action. 9A is a request to begin hiring process for proposed additional janitor position in 2024 draft budget. I believe that is Jeff's item. Anything to say on this?
Yeah, no, my memo kind of outlines kind of where we've been and where we are back again now. We have a phenomenal employee that we've hired and has been doing a great job, but with the added, double or triple the size of this building, responsibilities plus a very large increase in size for the library. Honestly, we monitor it every year, I think, during budget, as far as what the service costs are versus what hiring someone and full-time would be, and we're at that point. So this is what we'd be recommending. I think the costs will continue to go up for services, and this is one way. It's services like this are always, if we have the right people, it works really well. And if we don't, we hope we find a really good person here, but we're confident we can.
Okay, any questions?
I'll just say, so this is in the draft 2024 budget, and so what we're just asking for is just permission to go out and advertise. If for some reason it gets pulled from the budget, we wouldn't hire, obviously.
Right.
But this kind of helps us expedite that process instead of waiting till after November.
Yeah. Because we anticipate needing this 1st of January.
Yeah.
Right, Jennifer?
Okay, any questions? Okay, all those in favor?
I
say-
don't
or-
have a motion.
You have
Oh,
a
sorry,
motion?
I apologize.
I was gonna make the motion.
Okay, Tom
That's what I had my hand
and
up
Derek.
for, yeah.
How about that? Tom and Derek for
Okay.
first and second.
Got it.
And Jason's back for the vote. So, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion passes.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for that. I
Mark,
missed
do you
that.
want
Yes.
control of that?
All right, so 9B is review of the 2024 draft municipal budget, and I am going to let Martin take it from here.
Alrighty, so get this close. So yeah, so meeting 2 for the 2024 budget. Of course, where's my mouse? There it is. So at the last meeting, we didn't get so much into a lot of the budget specifically, but we talked a lot about just the sort of the big overview of things that are going on, some of the top headlines and factors influencing the 2024 budget. And so since that meeting, there really hasn't been any changes, which is actually pretty remarkable. Except for there's one minor change. So I'll just cover that, and then we'll get into some of the budgets more specifically, and hopefully I think we can breeze through pretty much the whole budget tonight. And I think we're in a position where we're ready to come out of this meeting to publish the public notice. I don't think it's necessary to have any additional village board meetings unless the board feels it's necessary. But we're getting into that time where we can get this out, get it published. We still have the November 6th meeting if there's anything that comes up between now and the 20th meeting when we'll have the public hearing and final approval. But I'm not anticipating really a lot of movement from here on out, except for Senior Center, who's one Rachel, is kind of the last big outlier, and I can talk a little bit about that in just a second. So the only change that you'll really see, 2 changes that you'll see in this packet tonight compared to your packet at the last meeting was we did have just a slight recalculation of the fire district's operating costs. We have the updated population numbers, which are the amounts are based on population plus some other factors. So Lisa ran that number, that calculation, and it ended up being a little bit more for the village's share, about $4,000. So we updated the budget for that. Of course, we had some contingency that we had built into the budget, so we just subtracted it off from there. So no issues there. And then and I'll talk about this tonight too, the sick leave fund, there's a correction I had there. I had just 2 employees eligible in the last one, but there's actually 4 that are eligible. So just updated some narrative in that section. So we talked about property taxes at the last meeting, and sort of the world, the law and the box that we're all sort of put in there, it being a local government in Wisconsin at the last meeting. I apologize, I'm going to scroll, which I've been told people don't like, so bear with me. Some people, named Candy and Elise.
He's definitely a gamer.
So bear with, I'm going to scroll, so bear with me here. So we talked about
Lisa and I will just look at each other.
property taxes. We talked about shared revenue, which is a once in a generational change this budget. We talked about forecasting future budgets and some of the challenges that we have in front of us. And I know we talked a little bit about options for that, including potential referendums and things of that nature. So I guess I'll just stop there. And is there any questions on that? Property taxes, shared revenues, future budgets, anything that we need to talk about or cover from that?
I'm just going to say thank you again for writing all that out, because it's a great thing to recommend to people they read when they ask us questions. You can direct them to the packet pages, whatever to whatever, and read that. It's a great overview. So
I'm going to actually suggest that you submit part of that to the Oregon Observer and have it published so that people understand some of the backstory of what goes into the money that we have to work with, and just how limited we are by state government and state statute.
Sure. I'll make a note.
should we put that, does
That's
that need to be a
just
future
a
agenda item, or
suggestion.
can we do that under this item? Because,
Yeah, I mean, I can put something together and maybe for the November 6th meeting, I can have just a sign off that you're okay with publishing whatever I put together on that.
everyone good? Okay.
All right, so moving on. So for the budget, we talked about at the last meeting again, sort of the top headlines that are influencing the budget. So I'd say all the items that are listed in here, along with the staffing changes that are listed. If you're looking at the line item budgets, probably 95 to 99% of any change in the budget is as a result of these things that are noted here. So we talked about salaries at the last meeting, some of the changes to benefits, shared revenue we talked about, investment income, rental income, big election year next year, the fire district operations, the senior center. And so with the senior center, I'll just give just a quick update. So myself and Phil met with Town of Rutland representatives and Village of Brooklyn representatives. And then we were also invited to the town board meeting of Oregon last Tuesday. We went and gave a presentation to their board. And all good meetings with all three communities, actually. I thought they went very well. Some good questions, some good positive feedback, some good receptivity to what we were putting forward. We just asked all three communities to give us kind of a yay or nay verbally by the first week of November. So they're in their budget meetings right now, and so we hope that we'll hear back from them, either a yay or a counter proposal. And so hopefully we'll get to November 20th and we'll have something set for the budget. As far as some of these other things, contingency was the other thing that we talked about. We had about 61,000 at the last meeting with the fire district recalculation with the population update. We're down to 57,000. So with the senior center, and we also have health insurance open enrollment going on too. Those are sort of the two big unknowns that may eat up some of that contingency that we have right now. But we have it built in, and I think we feel pretty good that that should be enough to cover anything. And then for staffing, we talked about some of the changes there, some of the changes to current positions with the village clerk, the parks crew person, the utility operators to managers, so changing positions to try to get more out of them and use them in different ways. And then we also talked about the additions of a couple staff positions, the police officer position, and then the teen librarian position, and then the court asking for a juvenile services worker position. So any questions on, I guess, and the janitor position, which we just talked about. Any question on staffing changes, and then also sort of those, like I said, those top headline, big impact items? Okay. Strategic plan, I showed that at the last meeting, so all of our items that are in the village board strategic plan, made a note on whether there's some money in the budget for that or if we're going to work on that, because not everything requires money. So that's all in there, so you can see where all of those goals are at. I will scroll for a few here. So we'll get sort of into the budgets a little bit more specifically, but I'll try to breeze through them as quick as I can. So capital funds, we of course went through our capital improvement planning process in the summer, so there's nothing really new here that we haven't covered before. This is just taking this plan, the 10-year plan that we adopted in August, and taking those 2024 numbers and putting them into our actual budget worksheets. And so there's nothing really new here. And for those of you who've been through the capital plan process and then the debt process in the spring, we're putting the capital projects in the budget, but they're really not going to be approved until we do the debt plan in the spring. So, if there's a hesitation on a certain project or a change of mind over the winter on a certain project, there still is going to be time for the board to say, no thanks, we don't want to proceed with that project. We don't want to borrow money for that project. There's still a few checks before some of these things actually end up moving forward. But everything is in there that we talked about in the spring. And then as you look at the line item budgets, we have our capital funds broken into different funds. All of these funds are described here. And I'll just talk a little bit about our cemetery funds. So you'll see explained in the packet. We have 3 different cemetery funds. One is right here. It's a land purchase fund. We also have a library fund that was created based off of a donation that the village received at some point. And then we also have a perpetual care fund of the cemetery. So we have these 3 funds. In many ways, they all sort of do the same thing. So our suggestion for this budget is to combine all of them rather than keep maintaining and reporting 3 different funds. And so we're proposing to close this fund, which was created early, 2004, 2005. Some money was seeded in here for potential acquisition of land in the future. Nothing has ever happened since that decision was made by the village board. It's just accrued interest. But again, the perpetual care fund serves that same purpose. It's money that's available for the cemetery to use for land purchases or operating or maintaining or special projects, that sort of thing. So trying to do a little bit of efficiency here with moving these funds all into one.
Can I ask
Amanda?
a question about that? So the village owns the cemetery.
Yep.
And we're responsible for taking care of it. But like if the cemetery needed land, that's the village board's decision?
If we wanted to expand the library, or I'm sorry, the cemetery, cemetery and library. Yes, if we wanted to expand the cemetery, it would be a village initiative to do so. Yep.
Okay, and I mean, I'm just asking, is there still space in the cemetery?
What can fit you up there? Yeah, we have about, I think there's like 6,700 grave sites. And I believe we have about 600 to 700. I'm trying to remember if it was in that.
900.
It was 900, that's what it was. 900 spaces that are still available. There's also things in the state laws I came across recently that allow us to eventually, there are many graves in older sections of the cemetery where families have disappeared and passed, and there are unused grave spaces. So there are actually ways that we can.
Infill?
Huh?
Infill?
Infill, yes. But it's a way you can actually resell graves that we can't get a hold of people with and stuff. We've never done that, but, and then one of the things that we've considered is there's the trend in the last 30 years has been towards many more cremations. And we don't have any kind of creches or any kind of, columbarium or anything like that. And so I've actually set aside land in the back of Section 6 that we could look at someday funding a project that would involve, a columbarium, basically a whole bunch of niches that we would be able to sell for urns and stuff. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Thank you.
and there's no additional land around it that's really.
No, nothing. I mean, the land to the east is the Mary Hill land that Mary Jo lease that is being developed by Viridian, and to the south is obviously the cemetery for the Catholics, the St. Mary's Cemetery, and then I guess the only thing is if we ever had some agreement to go north on that land that was purchased by the school district, but there really hasn't been a feeling towards doing that. cemeteries can, they're expensive to maintain. I mean, our costs that we collect annually in no way ever come close to what it takes to maintain the cemetery. So it's a service we provide.
I think you told me, so you said how many spots available, you think? Like 900?
900.
And how many burials do we do a year, roughly?
30?
Yeah, 35 to
30,
60.
yeah.
900 spots, 30 a year.
We're not in imminent danger
So
of
we're
No,
running
no,
out
no.
of space or
No,
anything.
yeah.
I just always wondered. I drive by it all the time, but I don't know anything about
It
it.
looks full to the naked eye when you just drive by, but there's, when you go in the back there, maybe a third of section 6 that is totally available still, and part of old section 1 where we expanded, so.
Okay.
I would say new sales, maybe 15 a year, if that.
Yeah, 15 to 20 new sales a year. I mean, there's more and more. It's actually, we've had a lot more inquiries, 3 this week.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, so this fund, you know, again, it's money that was set aside for the cemetery. You know, having 3 funds probably doesn't make a lot of sense. We'll just combine it all into one, and there'll be a pot of money available to the board at some point in the future if they want to, you know, purchase a columbarium or,
Right.
you know.
Put towards a project.
Yep. So those are our capital funds there, and again, you know, here's our you know, our budget worksheets. So you can see, you know, the actual dollars getting plugged into the 2024 category, and then what we've seen in the last year's actual, and then what's happening this year. Any questions on capital stuff? I know we've covered it quite a bit. All right, so let's scroll again. Sorry, Ken. So debt service, again, you know, this is sort of one where you have costs and you got to cover them. So, and we've talked a bit about debt service in relation to the capital plan the summer, and then Ellers came in August and gave their presentation on our financial management plan, which included a lot on our debt, but and I've included a couple of some of their more prominent tables that they provided us. But so here's our existing debt service that we have out for the next 20 years. You can see all of our obligations and then some of the things that are covering those obligations. We of course have seen this one and this one quite a bit when we were going through the capital plan process. So that's the impact of our capital plan on our debt service and how that translates to our tax rate and the impact on a $320,000 home in this table. We've gone over that quite a bit. And this one is, of course, where our debt service is in relation to our statutory debt limit, but then also our self-imposed debt limit. So, you know, we have, as we talked, you know, over the summer, we sort of do an all-in with all of our projects. We kind of planned for the worst case scenario where we'd have to do debt for everything, and that's what this reflects. So this reflects a new senior center. It reflects the new fire station potentially, or at least an expansion of the fire station. You know, of course, we've talked. There's maybe a little bit higher increase for the senior center project. So some of these things will start to move around a little bit. We'll revisit this again in the spring when we go to take out our debt, so that we know exactly where we're at just before we issue another debt obligation. But things are looking okay in terms of policy, of meeting our policy.
Can I add something to that?
Yeah.
Just is that still or I guess I'm asking, is that with the conservative
Yes.
growth, like 2% a year, when we're
Yes.
actually growing by much more than that? So,
Yeah. Yep.
okay.
Yep. Yeah. So this is a very conservative estimate because your statutory debt limit is based on your equalized value of your entire community, and so we do a very conservative estimate of what that will look like. Now, like I said, you know, the senior center quote, it was million, 1.7, 1.8 million more than what was in the CIP. So, you know, that might, you know, go up, cause some of these to go up a little bit. but yeah, the equalized value, if it's going up 10, 15% like it has been, is going to have a pretty big impact on that. So, you know, it's important to keep an eye on this, making sure we're staying there within where we want to be. But then this is also important too, because we want to make sure that you know, this debt service tax rate and the amount of debt service as part of our taxes is something that the village board can support and can agree with. So for debt, for at least the 2024 budget then, so when we look at our budget worksheet, you know, you can see, you know, here are all of our principal payments on debt service for next year of our existing obligations, and then our interest on those obligations is in this one. And so it's really just solving a math problem, and that math problem is solved with property taxes. So you can see that's the big primary source of revenue there. Any question on debt service at all? So general fund, again, you know, those top headlines, staffing changes, those things that I highlighted at the last meeting and went over quickly again, those are the things that are really influencing the general fund budget. Of course, the general fund budget is the fund that we use for our government services. So pretty much everything that we do and have to fund on an annual ongoing basis occurs within the general fund budget. So you can kind of see the sort of the top line, big numbers here in terms of the revenues, and then the top line expenditures and what those look like from year to year. And then in this part of the packet, I just go over you know, exactly what each of these categories is, so you can read those at your leisure. And then, of course, expenditures. And one thing I was just going to point out too, you know, we had Oregon Youth Center here this evening, so yeah, I had a note in there that yes, we got the 17,000 request in there. So anything, so there's a couple notes in there on just some various things, but just overall describing what each category is. And so you drill down a little bit farther, and here's our budget worksheets, each of the categories. You can see it broken down into our line items. And again, like I said, the top headlines, 99% of any change that you're seeing within these budget line items is due to most likely something related to one of those items. Is there any questions on general fund? This keeps our services running and the lights on. All right. So special revenue funds. So these ones I can go through pretty quick because a lot of these, you know, for budgeting purposes, they're not terribly consequential. A lot of them just get the money that they get and spend the money that they have. But these are things that are non-recurring things that don't make sense to be in the operating budget, or they have to be carved out for some specific reason, whether it's by law or just because the village has a preference of doing it that way. So the sick leave fund, I'll cover a little bit on this one. So we have a legacy benefit that's available to only 4 more employees. 2 have meet the eligibility threshold, and 2 more can still meet it. But this is just a benefit where if you have accumulated sick leave, you can get it paid out when you retire. That went away in 2000. Well, I don't know when the decision was actually made, but the eligibility depends on if you were hired before 2006, and you have to have been in a department head or supervisory role in order to qualify for this. So like I said, we got 2 that are already eligible, 2 that most likely will be, assuming they stay with the village. And then we have some payouts that are coming. These are just projected. You can see them here. So we have most likely about $120,000 payout in 2027. So we had a couple big payouts in 21. Mike Grace, my predecessor, and then Gary Dish was in Public Works. So that left the fund almost at a deficit, just under zero, a little bit. But we've now backfilled that with some revenue. What I'm proposing for in 2024 is, in the past, we relied on providing small amounts of property tax to try to seed fund this back. And that property tax, as we've talked about, is so valuable to our operation. So what I'm proposing is we don't do that anymore. We allow the property tax to be used by the general fund, and we use any surplus that we may have available, whether it's from the general fund or some other source, and we try to reseed and refund the liabilities that we have coming up in the future. So if you remember, this past summer, we did have quite a large surplus for a variety of reasons in our general fund as a result at the end of the 2022 budget. And we ended up moving that surplus to one of our capital funds, the Equipment and Building Projects Fund. So my proposal is that we send $150,000 of that out of that fund to this fund so that we can reseed this fund, give it a couple of years to generate some income, some investment income, so that we're positioned to be ready for that $120,000 payout in 2027. Otherwise, I think right now the fund has, I think it's projected to have, was it like 10,000, 16,000 at the end of this year. And if we're just giving 10,000 a year to 2027, we're not going to get there for that payment in 2027. So this seed funds it, gets us an opportunity to make some income, for sure be able to pay out that 2027 one, and then hopefully be in a good position to pay out that 2035 one too. And of course, those are, we're starting to get 10, 15, 20 years out here. So we'll have plenty of time, hopefully, to be in a position to cover those liabilities.
Quick question.
Yeah.
So assuming that that contingency fund that dropped by 4,000 since the last meeting for the fire station, assuming that has some money left in it by the time the budget process is done, would there be any value to putting that into this as well?
Yeah, we can use some of that for this. Yep. Yeah, any money that, and that would be my suggestion moving forward, is just any money that, chunks of money, surplus, some contingency amounts. Yeah, any money we got laying around. We tend to budget pretty conservatively in our general fund because we don't want to be in a position where we're at a deficit at the end of the year. And so, for example, we try to fully fund all of the positions that are budgeted for the whole year. But we know that, we have a new officer position that's budgeted for the full year. If you ask Chief, she probably would say that she probably won't have it filled January 1. No. So it's budgeted there because we know in 2025 we're probably going to have somebody hired and we're going to have to fully fund that. And if we didn't fully fund it in 2024, we're going to have to come up with more money to try to do that. So we try to fit everything in that we can, even when we know that there may be some unused funds that occur because of it. And so that's how some of these surpluses happen, is we just end up with some of these amounts of money that were just unused. And so we can use those for other things like this, for example, or what we've commonly done is we send that money to the Equipment and Building Capital Fund, and that helps us buy things like police equipment, smaller things that you really don't, boilers, you really don't want to go out and take out debt and amortize it over 10 years when you're going to be using that piece of equipment for 5 years, So that's sort of been the policy of the village, is to use some of those surplus funds. So yes, we can use whatever sort of little bit of money that we have for seeding this and hopefully getting into a position where we can pay these off for the next 20 years. Library, So the library has two funds. They have this library fund and they have library operating fund, which is after this. Library fund is sort of a non-operating irregular revenue and expenditure fund, which a lot of our functions have these. Basically revenue that we can't really count on to fund operations. It may be a grant, fundraising, things like that that we just can't count on being there to pay a staff wage. Or a special project. And so in the library fund, we've had the library building project budgeted out of this fund. So you'll see some pretty big numbers in the budget worksheet. Now hopefully we'll be past that in 2024. And so you're going to see quite a drop off in some of the numbers in this budget. But it's just for grants and fundraising and things like that just happen sporadically or randomly, and different types of projects and equipment and things like that they may not have otherwise purchased without some of these things. And then the library operating fund. So this is obviously for them to keep the lights on and pay their staff. This is this budget here. I think we've talked about a lot of the things that are impacting this budget. The things that are impacting this budget are the same that are impacting the general fund. We have the teen librarian position in there. The library uses the same compensation plan as the rest of the village employees. Probably the biggest notable thing other than those things is just it's a larger building. So we're trying to plan around sort of unknowns for how much this building is going to cost to operate on an annual basis. I think we have some pretty good projections and pretty good handle on some costs. There's also costs that we just didn't have as part of the other facility, like an elevator, servicing that, annual inspection, those sorts of costs. And then property insurance, this is triple the size of the last building, so it's going to be a larger cost to insure it. So you'll see there's some much bigger numbers, and hopefully we'll see over time as we start to get sort of a historical look at some of these costs over the next 1, 2, 3 years. We'll get a better handle on it and be able to budget, much more in line with historical precedent.
Martin?
Yeah.
What? It probably doesn't have anything to do with the budget, but I noticed here that they have exclusive control over lands, buildings, et cetera. So the old library.
Yeah, so the MOU for building the new library facility, there is a MOU between the village board and the library board, and that addresses that once they leave, the village will get control of that facility.
Yep. Thank you.
Yep. All right. Any questions on library stuff? We had OCA Media here at the last meeting, so this is that fund that we use to contribute to their operations. As Tom mentioned at the beginning of the meeting, this fund has we put revenues from cable franchise fees and state aid basically in lieu of these franchise fees, and I talk a little bit about that in the narrative here. But as Tom said at the beginning of the meeting, that's pretty much been leveled off and probably decreasing over time, I would guess. And so starting in last year's budget, or this year, 2023, this fund is operating at a deficit, and it will operate at a deficit again for 2024. It has a fund balance. It should be around 50,000-ish by the end of 2024 after this 2024 proposed budget. So that's something to think about as far as OCA Media and how the village can continue to fund that, at least as far as continuing to fund higher requests for funding. So at some point that might run out, and we'll have to talk about, what can we do to keep that going, especially in relation. It'll start to become put in the hopper with all the other village services in terms of competing for dollars once this fund sort of runs out. So, and I think OCA Media is totally we talked about it last year, and I think they're totally aware. And
Yeah.
yeah.
Yes.
Mhm. So that is that fund. Breeze through a couple of these. This is the Hermson Property Fund. We got some property that will become in a village park, a conservancy at some point, and we collect some revenue off of Highlands of Netherwood properties for that when they sell. So there's a fund there that we'll use in the future. The Drug Community Grant Fund is a pass-through fund that we have a partnership with Oregon Cares. They have a federal grant that they've been receiving and will receive for a couple more years. It's a 5-year grant. They needed an organization to act as basically like a financial pass-through, and the village met that criteria, and so we receive the revenue and then just pay it off to Oregon Cares based on the expenses that they make for their grant. So CDA fund, I'll just talk on this one a little quick, just briefly. So in the past, over 10 years ago, the village had a community development authority, which is a state statute body that can do things with housing and sort of economic development stuff. The village got rid of that in 2012. So there's been this fund that's sort of been hanging out there that has, I think it's $2,000 in it. We haven't closed it, so my proposal is we just finally close it. And my proposal here is that we send the money to the Affordable Housing Fund, which I can talk about in just a second. But this one's a little bit of a relic. Certainly the village could have a community development authority if it wanted to, but there's a whole, what's its source of funding, and it ends up being the village is the source of funding. So there's benefits and negatives to having one. So that's the proposal there, and I'll talk about the Affordable Housing Fund in just a second. We have a Senior Center Donations Fund. Again, it operates similar to like the library special revenue fund. One-time donations, things of that nature get put here. We'll certainly use probably a lot of these dollars for the building project at some point. Preserve the Water Tower Fund, a small fund, some $1,000 in this fund for the Tin Man. So we get some donation. They have the ice cream social every year. Some donations come in from that, and then there's some small amount of operating supplies that happen there. This is another one of those cemetery funds that we have. There's $674 in this one. Again, the proposal is just to close this out and just have one cemetery fund. Police special revenue, again, operates similar to the library and senior center special revenues, one-time grants, donations, special projects. They use the shop with the cop, the medical drop box. Some of these sort of special things come out of this fund, and those are supplied with either donations or grants. Refuse and recycling pickup. This is where we have sort of an in-out for our curbside garbage and recycling program and contract with Pelletieri. So residents pay a fee on their utility bills monthly for curbside pickup. That's where this revenue goes here. And then we have expenditures for the contract with Pelletieri that get expended out of here. So it's covers the revenue is to cover the cost of the expenditure. And we update the monthly fee annually. Tourism fund. So we have room tax imposed in the Village of Oregon, and you have to have a tourism commission that oversees that those room tax dollars. So that's what this is here, and they have to spend it on tourism-related activities. And so that usually is they provide some funds to the Chamber of Commerce for that. And then we also have some stuff for special events, special projects. I believe they gave some money to J.C. Park, that project, that sort of thing. So that's that budget. Canine funds for our K-9 officer program. So that program is entirely funded through donations, which are put into this fund here and budgeted in this fund. So you can see donations, and then all of their costs for training, operating supplies, equipment, all come out of this budget. Affordable housing, so this fund, so there's a carve out in the tax increment finance district law where you can keep a TIF district open one more year, and all the money you collect in that 1 year can be put into an affordable housing fund, and you can use those funds for affordable housing. So the village did that with TIF 2 when it closed in 2018, and almost got $500,000 to seed fund this fund. Some money was used for a project at Genesis Housing in 2020. Then we saw another project was here tonight, the Habitat for Humanity. The village allocated some funds from here for that project. And then we also still have about $150,000 available in this fund. So we still have some capacity to help out an affordable housing project if we have one come forward. And like I said before, we have a couple thousand that was in the CDA fund that I'm proposing to just move here and just be available for any projects that potentially come up. We had a fund that we set up for the ARPA funds that came out after COVID. We've spent all those funds now, so this will be closed out. And then we have our public art fund. So anything public art related has been expended out of this fund. So the Mini Tin Man, of course, the sculpture tour, and the art fair that happened this year were all expended out of this, and that is all through donations and grants. Yeah.
That account is gonna remain open though, right? In
Yep.
case, they're gonna keep taking in
Oh, yeah.
money and doing stuff, so.
Yeah, they still
Okay.
have. Well, we got that $100,000 tourism grant from the state. That was for public art. They still have quite a bit of that, 70,000-ish still left to spend. So that's, yeah, that's still there to be spent. And then, yeah, they still keep bringing in donations, quite a bit of donations actually, some regularity. So, yep. So community events fund. So this is a new one for this year. So we hired Leanne last year to do some recreation and program coordination for us, kind of to fill a gap that we really needed in our staffing. And of course, she took over the Sounds of Summer concert series from the Senior Center. For some reason, the Senior Center was doing that. So she took that over this year and done a great job. She brought in some donations and some sponsorships as part of that. And so she started generating some revenue. And so we felt like it would be good to have a new fund that sort of brought in some of that irregular revenue that we get. So she's got that planned for this upcoming year again. And then she's got some other things in mind, like some outdoor movie nights and things like that she sort of is working on. So we have budgeted some donations and things in here. We also have sort of her anticipated budget for some of these projects. And we also, I believe we attributed, I think 1% of Leanne's salary to this fund, which will be covered through anticipated donations. So trying to alleviate the general fund just a little bit, but over time may grow some more. So that's that fund right there, and hopefully a self-sustaining fund. So that's very cool. Yeah.
While we're talking about Leanne's position, am I allowed to talk about some of the other things that she does
Sure.
in this thing? Because one of the
This is the
things she
budget.
did was help put together some little swag bags. She got some donations from like Chocolate Caper and Little Buddy's popcorn, and put them in little bags for the German exchange students who came to town and gave them a tour of the thing here. And Leanne was very helpful in that regard, to just be very welcoming, and so she doesn't just do like big community events. She does a lot behind the scenes. So this is a good position. I'm really happy we have it.
Yep.
So.
Yep, definitely filled a gap we had on staff for sure. All right, so any questions on all those assortments of special revenue funds? A lot of them are mostly self-sustaining. I think only the library gets the contribution of property taxes for their operating. But other than that, they get what they get and they spend what they have. All right, so TIF districts. So these are a little bit like the debt service funds in that they sort of are not, they're kind of static. There's not much that we can do within them except for if we're going to do projects within them. So I have a little explanation in here on our current TIF districts, and then also there's this crazy like calculation for how tax increment levies work that I tried to explain a couple budget cycles ago, and just keep it in here for when you're bored and want to read it. But just briefly go over our current districts, and then of course we have a new one, TIF 6. So Ellers was here in August when they did the financial management plan report, and they provided these early versions of these reports that are in here. But we also have to do an annual report to the state for all of our districts, and the Joint Review Board, which is sort of a multi-jurisdictional body that has oversight over our TIF districts, has to receive those reports and then approve those reports. And they did that a week ago, 2 weeks ago, on October 5th. And so these are the same reports that they received. Just has a basic overview of what each of the purpose of each of these districts is, some of the information on some of the projects. You can see where they're located on our map here. Some of the cash flow. You know, for the purpose of budgeting for TIF districts, probably the cash flow is more illuminating than the actual budget itself for any given year. So you can see sort of where we're expecting revenues to come in for these districts here. Our debt service that each district has from doing projects, and then you know, so how that's sort of lining out in terms of balances and tax levy support. So TIF 3 was basically replaced by TIF 5. So TIF 3 still has quite a bit of debt service yet to pay, and that's from various projects that happened in the past, whether they were street infrastructure or what have you. Actually, probably a lot of the improvements that happened in the downtown were expended out of TIF 3 over these last 20 years. So the increment that's being created, the tax levy that's being created from the value in TIF 3 has never been enough to support the costs that have been incurred by TIF 3, so the debt service. So this fund needs some tax levy support, and we talked a little bit about that at the last meeting. And we expect that it will continue to have to be supported by the general property taxpayer for, you know, the next 5, 6, 7 years here until about 2028, 4 or 5 years, at which point it will start paying back the general fund for what the general fund provided it. Now this one had quite a bit of general fund support. In fact, it will top out at $3.1 million. And even if we extend this TIF out for the maximum amount of time that we can under state law, we won't be able to recoup all of our tax levy support for this district. And as I said, it's kind of been replaced now by TIF 5, and so we're just trying to pay our debts and close and recoup as much as we can, and then close it out at some point. For TIF 4, Did you have a question, man?
Yeah, so just to clarify, the TID 3, the reason it has this deficit is just there a lack of development projects in it?
Yeah, so,
Is that
well, it's
how
probably,
that works?
most likely it's two things. And sometimes this happens, and I think to a certain degree, I think TIF 5 was created under this premise too, but not, the local governments don't always necessarily go into creating TIF districts with the expectation that everything is going to be covered by the TIF district, because there's a variety of reasons why you want to create a district, and it may not necessarily be that you may go in knowing that you're not going to be made whole. There's something, some other element that is a priority for the governing body that, feeds into the creation of these districts. So the reason why this one needs tax levy support is two reasons: the amount of projects and the cost of projects that were done. So we're paying some debt service off as a result of those projects. And two, like you said, there just wasn't as much development that happened that can support those costs. And so we don't have as much revenue, we have increased costs, and so we have to fill that with something, and the only thing that we can fill that with is property tax from the general property taxpayer. Now, with like TIF 3 is primarily a downtown district, and I think what happened with a lot of downtown districts, they were very popular in the 90s and early 2000s. The problem with downtown districts is they're already built. There's already value there, and you can't generate a ton of new taxable value through redevelopments, and so you don't end up having a lot of tax increment created from new value, and so it's hard to generate enough to do the sort of projects that most communities really want to do in these downtown districts. And so, I don't, who knows what the equation was 20 years ago. There may have been a thought of like, well, we want to make these improvements to the downtown and try to capture as much new value as we can, knowing that the property taxpayer is going to have to probably cover a certain amount to make it work. So that's, I'm making some assumptions there, but that's probably my guess on how things sort of transpired with this district. So for TID 4, scroll. So TID 4 is, we've seen a lot of stuff happen there in the last couple of years. And so there's some notes on some of the projects that have happened in the last, 5 years here. And the village has incentivized a lot of those projects. So the hotel, the Rosewood apartment complex, which is next to the hotel, Lake Stone, Prairie Brook, which was the affordable housing project, Bodie Howe, which just opened, had an incentive to it. But then we also, of course, had Culver's and the new Quick Trip project, which aren't incentivized. So there's been a lot of value that has happened in the last couple of years in TID 4. So for that cash flow, you're starting to see, here's this tax increment. So tax increment is the amount of property tax collected on new value in the TIF district. And so you're starting to see kind of this explosive growth of new taxable value that's happened, that's going to happen over the next couple of years because of all the development that we've had. And so the general tax, property tax has supported TID 4 because we have done projects there. Most recently last year we did the intersection project at Janesville and Park. Yeah. And then we've done some other things there too, some street projects and some improvements to some other intersections too. So there's been some capital projects there, and so the general taxpayer has picked up some of that. I know there was also a reevaluate. There was a negative adjustment to one of the properties that kind of set us back quite a bit, and when the TID was first created in the first couple of years. And so we've kind of recovered from that, and so there's still some property tax levy that's going to be contributed up to 1.5 million is projected, but then it's going to start paying that back, pretty rapidly here over the next couple of years. So hopefully that tax levy support will dwindle and it'll be self-sustaining moving forward. We don't have any capital projects planned in TID 4 over the next 10 years, at least right now. So that could change as well. And the other thing you can see too in this one is, the incentives. You can see those really start to ramp up as these projects get done, and we're paying out, those incentives that we promised as part of these developments. So, any questions on TID 4? This one is projected to pay off all of its general fund support, which is a good thing. And then TID 5 is the golden child. So this one doesn't need tax levy support. It's funding all of its expenses on its own, starting last year and continuing this year. And it's in an even better position. You can see again tax increment growth from that and just increasing what it's going to increase here. The two big projects that set this one off at a good start were Jefferson Crossing in the downtown and then the Ticey expansion project that happened on the north side of town. So that got everything off to a good start. So it's paying all of its costs and all of its debt. Doesn't need any tax levy support, and it's actually going to start to grow quite a balance here over time. We have some street projects planned over the next 10 years that we'll continue to do, but projections say that we're going to be able to accommodate some more projects. So, and we have some more development happening with the apartment project that's under construction right now by Quick Trip on the north side. That was an incentivized project through TIF 5. That will add some value. 249 North Main Street is in TIF 5, so that will add value to this district. And there's been some other things that have kind of been percolating out there that may be coming forward over the next year or so. Anything on TIF 5? All right. TIF 6. We just created TIF 6 and the Joint Review Board formally approved it on October 5th. So that is all done with. We just approved the incentive agreement at the last meeting with that project. So this is just a single parcel TIF district, which is new for us, but not uncommon in other communities. And so this district was really created just to incentivize that affordable housing project. And so you can see the cash flow. We start out a little bit at a deficit because we have some of these administrative costs up front before we start collecting the increment. But those are pretty minimal. Those can be easily captured by the general fund. And then we'll start to collect that increment. And I can't remember the exact split. I think it was 80-20. The developer gets 80% of the increment, right. We get 20%. So we'll cover their incentive, and then we'll start to see a little bit of revenue on the side, and that'll have a small accumulation over the lifetime of the district. Anything on TIFs at all? All right, and then our utility funds, water utility and sewer. So we've talked quite a bit about utility funds with, of course, our rate increases that we've talked about. Ellers has been here a couple of times. They were here in August when they did the financial management plan. I included in the packet just the full report that they gave us in August, because that really captures everything about how the financial health of the utilities is right now. Of course, we have the water rates that have now been approved by the PSC, and those will be going into effect at the end of the year here. And so the water utility budget reflects those revenues now increasing. I'll just go. Okay, I'm going to scroll a little bit. Sorry. So, um, so here's the actual budget worksheet. So it's relatively simple, straightforward. This service is entirely funded mostly from rates, of course. So you can see our sales, and we've increased those to based on projections of our new water rates. This budget looks a little bit different than our government services budgets because they're required to, based on Public Service Commission regulations. We have to account for things like depreciation, which we don't have to in our government budgets. So you'll see some of those sort of nuances in this budget. We also have to break out our expenditures based on function. And so you'll see there's just a lot of categories, and they're broken out by labor into each category. And so we try to make a kind of a best guess on where all those costs will fall. And yeah, you can see all just the different funding accounts and a lot of zeros. But we have to report it that way because of the Public Service Commission. So there's nothing too terribly noteworthy other than, we've talked about employee compensation. We've talked about rates being the big thing. So those are sort of the top headlines for the water service. I'll just go right into the sewer. Sewer is somewhat the same as the water, but we don't have PSC regulation for sewer utilities, so we're a little bit more freer to do some different things, have more flexibility at the local level. We've talked about sewer rates. I believe Ellers is actually going to be at the next meeting. They're going to talk about sort of the final recommendation for sewer rates for 2024. So they'll be here November 6th to present that. And for the November 20th meeting, when we have the budget approval, we'll ask for a final decision on the rates at that meeting as well. So we can budget accordingly. Right now in the draft budget, we do have the sewer utility revenue budgeted at the rate projection that we believe that we're going to need. And of course, that's primarily being driven by the large the wastewater treatment plant project that we have coming up. And so we're going to need those rates to support the cost of that project going forward. So again, for sewer, you're going to see some things, again, like depreciation, which isn't accounted for in our government services. Again, pretty basic. We get our rates, we get our revenue rate. Those are our revenues, and then our expenses, again, they're broken out by function, similar to the water service, not as intensely complicated as the water utility is, but still trying to account for where expenses are based on function. Anything on water and sewer utilities? All right, and then last, we have these fiduciary funds, which are funds that we keep as if we're a trustee of something or an agent of something. Somebody gives us an endowment. And this is, of course, where we have our perpetual trust fund for the cemetery. And this is the fund that we're proposing to keep. And we're just going to put all the other cemetery funds into this fund. And then we also have a donation that was given to the library that is accounted for here, too. So that's the 2024 budget. Any other questions? And then this last page is for the summary that we have to publish, required summary by state law. This is everything I just said in one spreadsheet.
That's impressive.
Yeah. So this is what we got to report. We got to publish in the newspaper, and then a variation of this is actually what ends up being the final adopted budget, which will be before you on November 20th.
Make sure those hashtag
Yeah,
things
that's
are taken out.
The column's got to be
Expanded
a little bit. Yeah.
Okay. Well, nicely done. This is probably one of the smoothest budget processes I've been through. So, yeah, I mean, so 5 years ago or so, when I first got on the board, we would have 5 or 6 budget meetings. And this is 2, and we're about done, little tweaks, but
Yeah.
pretty easy. So, yay, thank you.
Yeah, I mean, we do a lot of front end work. I mean, with the capital stuff, you know, you spend the summer doing that. You know, a lot of communities do all of that at one time with the operating, so that creates more meetings often. So we do a lot of legwork up front. And then I think, you know, when you start to understand sort of like the property taxes and how they work and just sort of the box that we're kind of in, it just becomes a matter of what can we fit in there and what's a priority, and then just trying to do as much as we can within that box. And I think we've done a pretty good job this year of doing that.
Lynn.
Yeah, I will just applaud you one last time. I think that for Amanda to say that it's smooth, although I'd like it to be our effect on the board, probably is really all credit to you and to the staff for being as creative as you can be within that box. And I think that we just couldn't say it enough, that we just genuinely appreciate the work that you all do to make us look good and make this easy.
Yeah, one thing I'll say too, especially about the department heads, you know, one of the things that I sort of preach to them is, you know, it's always better if we can work out internally amongst ourselves, sort of a division of resources. And this group is very good at doing that. You know, like I said, we had a $300,000 deficit when we pulled the budget together initially, and I think every department stepped up and said, "Well, just take this out, or we can change this in my budget." You know, so we didn't have to come to you to sort of resolve some of those disputes. We just figured that out internally and presented sort of a united front of a staff budget, and so that I think that helps on both sides. I think department heads are grateful that they don't have to be pitted against one another in a public meeting, and I think all of you probably feel that way of not having to pit people against one another in a public meeting. We can have that consensus, and then like I said, come to you as a united front. So I think that again, I can't say enough about you know, department heads and being willing to do that. And I'll just say, like, Jenny, for example, you know, I sent out the email for that we had a $300,000 deficit, and she fired back an email with like in an hour of like, just pull my lieutenant's position out. I mean, that's incredible that the police chief would just be willing to be, you know, that accommodating for something like that. Very unusual, actually. I mean, to have such a gracious department head group and being willing to work together.
Thanks, Shell.
Yeah, thank you.
Really.
Okay, anything else? All right, I am going to move on. On the agenda 9C, we're going to skip because it's on here twice. So we will just have it in a little bit. Number 10 is reports of village officers, department heads, and consultants. These are informational only. No action by the village board will be taken. Their reports are in the packet. 10A is the village administrator report. I don't know if you have any comments on that. It's just in there. It's a nice listing of all the projects and tasks that the village is undertaking in their current status, which is very helpful. Okay. 10B is the chief of police report. She has a monthly report for September activities. And chief, go ahead.
So I don't have anything to add, but I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Lynn.
I just have one question, and I'm maybe afraid of the answer. It says that you've started the hiring process for 2 police officers to fill some open positions. How's that going?
We moved 2 onto backgrounds, and we'll see how that goes.
Okay.
Sorry, probably too far away from the mic. It's all about timing. For us, the next police academy starting is in January. We have 2 spots reserved. Maybe we'll be able to fill one, maybe not. It's just really in the early stages now. But just in case, we also have 2 academy spots saved in a April academy. So now we're just trying to line up some sort of success moving forward. But the timing, when we post for hiring, if we're doing it to try to line up right with an academy, we're right up next to every single other department in the state of Wisconsin. So right now, if we do have to go beyond this hiring pool that we're in right now, we'll actually fall outside of that timeline, and maybe that will help us. So we're remaining, as Martin would say, cautiously optimistic. It's my new phrase. But you know, we certainly, though, as difficult as it is, we're out there, we're pounding the cement in job fairs and just interactions with the community, social media, and then of course our normal notification avenues that the village uses. But we'll continue. The biggest thing though too is we're not going to lower our standard. We will keep looking to find the right individuals for this community and for our police department.
All right. Looks like no other questions here. 10C is the Director of Finance report. In the packet are our current building permits, impact fees, and connection fees ending September 2023. Are there any questions about that? Okay. Then we'll move on to 11, announcements and miscellaneous business. 11A are announcements, comments, communications, upcoming meetings and events, and miscellaneous business. Village board members may provide brief statements, but no discussion or action of the body shall occur. Anybody have anything? Caroline.
I just would like, if anybody knows any students who they think might be appropriate for the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee, we are going to be contacting the school district, the high school in particular, about students they might recommend. But we do have a student opening. Alyssa graduated from high school and is at the University of Chicago now, and so that position is vacant.
Go ahead, Lynn.
I just wanted to thank Jeff and the Public Works crew. I got the privilege of planting some trees on Saturday in the rain. And it was actually a really delightful event, very thoughtful planning on what trees and where they go. I was incredibly impressed with the knowledge that they have on where trees thrive the best. So I just really appreciate the time and attention you took for that.
We'll have next meeting, I think we have have some photos and stuff.
I'm jumping the gun, sorry.
No, you're good. You're good, I'm glad.
Good. Anyone else? I have one quick one. Because Phil was on vacation or away, I got to welcome the German exchange students to the village. And that was really fun. Give them a tour of the village hall and just letting people know out there that there are exchange students in town. That's why the German and American flags are flying around. It's a fantastic program. I was so excited to be able to do that in one of my official duties. Made me very happy. But just officially welcome the Germans to town, and yeah, it was fun. So, okay.
I mean,
yeah.
Anything about the Habitat breakfast tomorrow?
Oh yeah, I could do. Yeah. Carlene just reminded me about the fact that the Habitat for Humanity has a breakfast that some village board members are going to
in the morning. I was planning on attending. I don't know if anybody else, and Carlene was thinking about going. Yeah, you are coming for sure?
Yeah.
Okay. So it's like put on by Habitat for Humanity, and they get people who have participated in the program, and they get municipal leaders together to talk about the program and further their goals. So we'll be attending that tomorrow morning. I think that's it. 11B is future agenda items. This item gives village board members the opportunity to place a topic on a future agenda for discussion and or potential action. Anybody have anything to add for future? Okay.
If we have a committee report, we just send that to Candy and it goes in the committee reports. We don't, that's not outside. Okay, yeah.
Okay. Hearing none, I will entertain a motion to adjourn. Jason and Carlene, all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we are adjourned.